to The Wealth Whisperer. I am very, very honoured to be joined today by the very wonderful Tim Adams, who is a peak performance coach. And I have no doubt that he is going to be sharing some incredible insights about what it takes, what success means in his eyes, you know, the importance of how to get there, the pitfalls, the amazing things that can come when you actually go for your goals and your dreams, etc. And they'll give you loads and loads of insights along the way. But we are absolutely in for a treat today because Tim has amazing, extensive experience working as a world-class performance training coach. All the way from high-level athletes, world champions, in fact, the NHL, the NFL even. I have to learn these three-letter acronyms. There are so many of them to your name, Tim. Many top American football teams, the NHL, which is the National Hockey League, Olympic athletes, and even the US Air Force, to senior level business people, professionals, entertainment industry icons. And essentially what Tim does, as far as I can make out, is he helps people to cut through the overwhelm and get them on the road to better health and having more energy with his proprietary systems. So I am absolutely blown away to have him here today. He's even done a TEDx talk, which is something I would love to do at some point, and he's already done that. So all credit to you, Tim. So I'd love to absolutely welcome you to The Wealth Whisperer today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Hazel. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited to go deeper with you and explore what comes up.
Absolutely. So just so that people can kind of grasp a little bit about what it is that you do, perhaps being a business and peak performance sports coach, I'm guessing that you obviously love those two arenas of life, and so perhaps you can tell us a little bit about how you ended up in doing this as a profession.
That's a great question. And it's a twofold question. I'll start with this piece of when I was, probably like 6 years old. I remember going outside with my dad and him throwing me the football, and I was making these diving catches to get the ball, American football, obviously. And there were, at this time in my age, there were a handful of American wide receivers that I idolized, and they were very acrobatic, and two of them, Ahmad Rashad and oh man, now I can't even remember the other guy's name. They did ballet, and it was this really graceful approach to something that American football is a very violent sport, and yet these guys were doing ballet because they saw the benefit to being able to perform out on the field. I took it as these diving catches. And so I had this dream that I was going to play American football in the National Football League. And I got recruited to play college football, and I ended up tearing my ACL, a ligament in my knee, anterior cruciate ligament in my knee, on winter break my first year of college, and ended up having surgery, and it was never the same after that. I ended up having a lot of issues with it, get cut from the football team, and wanted to be part of a team still, and I was pretty good in the weight room. And so I asked my strength coach if I could be a student coach, and he kind of looked at me funny, and he goes, "That's a great idea." And so that's kind of how I got into coaching. And what happened from there is I have this really broad curiosity just to everything, and well, maybe not everything, but the things that I certainly value and am interested in. And so I had the opportunity. I went to the Air Force Academy, graduated, so I had to go off and buy aircraft for the Air Force. And in that, my ex-wife was a really good collegiate athlete, and I was helping her and her team, just unbeknownst to me, do things kind of from a training perspective. And so I was dabbling in this coaching world, and then I got the opportunity to come back to the academy and actually coach and become a coach. So I was assistant strength coach, and and we had all these injuries on our team. And when I was playing, obviously I got injured, but when I started doing the weight room stuff, I'd my shoulder would hurt, so I'd go down and see this guy in our town called his name was Dr. Leahy. He developed a technique called active release technique, and he'd do this technique on me, and then I'd go in and I wouldn't be able to lift my shoulder, and then he'd work on me, and boom, I could get my shoulder over my head, and not only get it over my head, but be able to max and do really well. And so I started sending all these cadets back down to Dr. Leahy to get worked on, and then our sports medicine staff was like, Tim, you can't send them down, out of our network, because we don't know what's going on with them. And I'm like, I know, but isn't it great? They're practicing again and they're competing again. And they're like, yeah, that's great, but we don't know what's going on with them. And so I was like, well, what happens if I learn how to do it and then I just keep you guys abreast of what's going on? And they're like, yeah, that's great. So I went and got certified, and now I'm in the weight room doing soft tissue manual therapy on these guys. And my strength coach comes up to me and goes, Tim, what are you doing? I'm like, they're able to lift again, and they're practicing again, and they're competing again. Isn't that great? And he goes, no, you're not coaching. And I'm like, so I got into this space where I really learned early on that people that have a discipline and think that they have to do things a certain way, they get stuck in a box. And I kept trying to get out of the box, and I didn't even want to be in the box. And it created a lot of resistance, because that wasn't my first experience. It happened in the NFL. It happened in the NHL. It happens all the time with me, because people are like, know your role, do what you're told to do, and nothing else. And I think that's a really challenge in business, for sure. When I do go in and do leadership training for these tech companies, it's so fascinating how compartmentalized every component of the business is, and they don't talk to each other. And if they do, it's a cursory conversation, and there's a lot lost in translation with that. And so there's this piece of me around performance that every time I learned something, it did two things for me. It changed the way I did what I did in the past. So I couldn't now do the same thing, because now I had new eyes to see that what I was doing actually was the cause of what I'm now fixing, or may have limited what I was doing. And then the second thing it did is, because my perspective shifted, it elevated the way I see things, so that I could actually see things differently. And by seeing things differently, now I could start to truly begin to integrate these different components in a different way. And it's that integration that people talk about, integration all the time. I've got all these books in my library, and I can't tell you how many of them talk about, an integrated approach to this or that. And that integration is really limited by your perspective, because if you can only see a couple of things, your integration is really only for a couple of things. And so I made it a passion of mine to seek out, how can I serve my clients the best, but how can I also look at the situation from as holistic approach as possible, and see how all of these different things not only relate, but then can become integrated into what I do. And so, again, started in the weight room, and then got certified in soft tissue manual therapy, then traveled the world to learn about speed and biomechanics and movement. And then that led me into the NFL. And when I got to the NFL, the thing that was really fascinating for me was, I'd been working with these college kids who desired to play in the NFL. And oftentimes they were bigger, they were faster, they were stronger than the guys that had made it. But the difference was the mindset, the mentality of those individuals. And so I went all in on the mindset. I wrote a book on the mindset of performance, Making the Best Better. And then that really opened up a whole nother realm of seeing, that then led me to emotional work, trauma work, group dynamics, human behavior. And every time, again, I learned something new, I just was able to apply things differently. And what was once really important to me became either trivial or not important. And each time I was always like, what's the one thing that I can do today to move the needle of my client today, not tomorrow, but today. And it became really this differentiator of how my clients were able to accelerate their results. And then when you think about that, if you're improving every single day, and people talk about, 1% improvement every day, I'm in a place where it's like, how can I compound that? How can I compress your adaptation in such a way that over the course of the year, you're not just, 1% better on a daily basis. You're exponentially better. And when you do that, it separates you from the crowd in such a significant way. It's incomprehensible. And that's what ended up happening with like my clients, with my experience, because every time I went and learned something, I didn't just learn from the guy down the street. I went to the guy who developed the technique, who did the research, who was producing world records, who was turning companies around, who was like the known leader in the industry. And when I went there, and this is an interesting approach to how I learn, I didn't want their programs. I didn't want their book. What I wanted was this conversation around, what were you thinking when you created that? And every time I asked that question, everybody had the exact same response. And they're like, no one's ever asked me that. Or everybody wants the program. They don't want to know how I developed it. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, if I know how you think about doing that, then I can reproduce that. And so
love that.
that really served me really well. And it's brought me to this place where now I'm very fortunate that I've worked with all these iconic individuals in pro sports, in the Olympic arena, in entertainment, in the music world. But I've also worked with these industry leaders and icons in the business world. And so what I do now is I tell people that, like, I've got 39 years of a depth, a breadth, and a density of experience and expertise. But I also have this breadth of, like, massive thought leadership, massive industry leadership of individuals that I can draw from and share with my clients that, hey, this guy was in this situation, he was doing this, and this is how he approached it. How can we apply that to this current situation? And it just brings a different perspective. And I say I'm a glorified problem solver. Really what I do is I just help people see their situation from a different perspective.
Yeah, amazing. Sounds like you've been on an incredible exploratory journey over your lifetime.
Yeah.
And the insights that you've gained. And like you say, to me, it sounds like you've come to things fresh. And when you come to something fresh, and like you say, other people see it from a particular way, and yet you see it from your way, or you're seeing from their perspective there, but you've got lots of different angles that you've explored, that you can then see, there's an overarching thing going on here. Or it sounds like you've been able to work magic in terms of the experience that you've drawn upon, as a pooled.
I feel very fortunate about that.
Incredible.
Because the other thing that gives me is, like, there's many roads to Rome, and some people want the fastest path, and I'm like, okay, well then maybe we should consider this. And the reality is, just because it's worked for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And this is where we have to really understand who we are. And that leads to kind of this whole other conversation for me, where about 10 years ago, I lost everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. And
Wow.
lying on the floor, bubble making snot coming out of my nose, tears in my eyes, and I was begging God to take this situation away from me. And the funny thing is what I realized is it started when I was a little kid. My parents, we grew up in Indiana. It's a Midwestern, I would call it, state in the United States where we lived in a small rural town. If you blink,
Mhm.
you would actually miss it if you were driving through it. It was so tiny, and and my both parents worked, and so my sister, who was a year older than I, Amy, she and I were left at home. So she's 6, I'm 5, and we're left alone home alone. And I mean, I almost burnt the house down. I almost lost my little pinky toe on my foot because I almost cut it off, and and I was in a space where I was like hungry for connection and love and appreciation, and I compensated, I adapted by looking externally for that, and
Wow.
that
Yeah.
externalization caused me to want to please everybody,
Mm.
and then my dad worked 2 jobs when we moved to Colorado. He was a night watchman by night and a school teacher by day, and I never saw him. And that taught
Mm.
me, like you saw in the TED Talk, this space that success means suffering. And in the football arena, it's a mindset of no pain, no gain. Pain is
Yeah.
just weakness leaving your body. Suck it up. And I just learned to grind. And
Mm.
and there are a lot of other kind of lessons I learned from that. But really what happened is I was off track for most of my life. I didn't know who I
Mm.
was because I was externalizing everything. And it led me to this point where 10 years ago I made a bad decision, and many bad decisions that led me there. And what happened was I I had to start doing the inner work. And
Right.
and that inner work, like losing everything, was the best thing that ever happened to me because it was where I finally had to face me. I had to face all these shadows and demons and darkness that I had been running from my entire life. And 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 I tell my clients this now. It's like, life is going to give you a lesson, and it's going to start with a whisper, and then you're going to hear the voice, and then you might get a knock on the door, and then at some point you might get the door kicked down. and
Yeah.
and if you don't get those lessons, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when your house will get burnt down in order for you to get the lesson. And
Yeah.
I've had my house burnt down multiple times. And
Wow.
I'm at a place now where I understand that true performance and true success doesn't come from climbing a mountain and having
Mm.
an accomplishment in one area of your life. It's about bringing everybody that you want with you. It's about having the health and the vitality and the virility to be able to enjoy your life for the years to come. Because the last thing you want to do is stand on a mountain and be all by yourself, because that's where I was. I had all this
Yeah.
success, but in a matter of like an instant, I lost everything. And when I say everything, like bankruptcy, I lost the ability to make money, I lost all my friends, and I was
Wow.
literally alone.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I can't tell you how many of my clients that I've worked with in the past that have been in the exact same situation where they
Yeah.
are extremely successful having built a business, but they find themselves in a place where their family doesn't want to be with them. They have estranged those relationships, and now they really don't have anybody around them because it's they're the ones who did it. And then some
Yeah.
of those clients are at the top, and yet they can't even function. They can't walk. They're afraid they may not wake up tomorrow because their health is so poor. Like there's so much to me around success where this concept of grind mentality, hustle harder mentality only puts you in a place where if you don't make a shift out of it at some point in your career, you're going to be alone. Your health is going to
Yeah,
fail. There's going to be consequences to those decisions. And so for me, what I find now is if I can get my clients to do this inner work, then then everything changes because now they're able to have more energy to focus on when they get home. They're not exhausted, or if they are exhausted, they understand the necessity to pour into the relationships at home. And because if you
absolutely.
dismiss that, it's only a matter of time before you lose it. So
And I,
go ahead.
yeah, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, I was just going to say like the my takeaway from that, and the reason I share that is because this mindset of hustle and grind and do things at all cost, it's okay for a season. It's necessary in I talk about this concept of the developmental ladders of performance. And it starts where everybody's a novice. And then you have the amateur level, and then you go to the pro level, then you go to the all-star level, and then you get to the icon level. And for me, there's a one level above that, or really two, and that is the performance maverick, and then beyond the performance maverick. And the reality is that hustle and grind is required for the lower levels. Like you have to learn how to work. Like it's a requirement, and each level has a foundational requirement before you can move to the next. And if you don't fulfill on those requirements, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to get bumped back down in order to have to
Mm,
fulfill on that, in order to create
yeah,
sustainable success. And that's
I love that. Yeah.
that's why we see so many one-hit wonders or people that hack their way to the top.
Mm,
They haven't built the foundation in order to create sustainability. And
yeah.
so for me, I've got this calling, for lack of a better word, of sharing this experience that I have with other individuals, and I really truly say leaders, because
Mm,
I believe that the quickest way to improve the human condition is by touching the hearts, the minds, and the souls of
mm.
leaders who can touch thousands, millions, maybe even billions of people.
Unbelievable. I mean, absolutely agree with you. And I would say that, with all of that experience, and it's a definition of success, isn't it? It's what you define as success, because I'm sure those people, many people that you've met, the success is in the externalization of, like, I need to get to this level,
Yep.
I need to reach that goal, I need to have that, accolade,
Yeah.
whatever. And actually, like you say, there's a whole facet, other facets of what it means to be
Yeah.
successful, because you can be a successful father, you can be a successful son, you can be a successful, worker in your
Yeah.
business, or business owner, but there are so many different facets to success,
Absolutely.
to in order to make it sustainable, isn't it? That's the
Yeah.
key. And would you say, therefore, having had the experience, and clearly, I mean, talk about quite a radical experience as a child, and having experienced and witnessed your parents working all the hours that God sent, being left alone to fend for yourselves, that you must have developed a completely different view of the world. As you say, you kind of, you had the opportunity to explore. It sounds like you were not funneled through the system, because one of my questions was going to be, have you ever had a normal job? Doesn't sound like it, but
Yeah.
have you ever, in terms of, having gone through the system, in terms of this system that most people in society are channeled through,
Mm.
would you say that the experience that you had enabled you to literally, like we were talking about just before this interview, about, not just like, I want to think out of the box, it's like that what box,
Yeah.
the what box moment. But it's like, it's almost like it's too radical to go like what box to start with.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of maybe kind of gently peer out the box, or kind of, if you have it, if it's too sudden maybe, or the stratospheric success, like you say, kind of happens over, well, not overnight, rarely happens overnight,
Yeah, yeah.
but like that unsustainable success, as you've just defined. Would you say that it's what would you feel about the way that the system kind of perhaps restricts or disables people from maybe exploring outside of that, because you're so used to working with leaders? I mean, how do you see it? How do you view the system and the way that your life have perhaps shaped your view of that?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Hazel. And it opens up a really big can of worms, because I do believe the system is designed to keep people in the box. And I say what you want, but the more you learn and the more you elevate your, this is how I talk about it. It's like the deeper you go into you, the higher your perspective goes, which really ultimately means the higher your consciousness becomes. And so I if you haven't done this inner work, being in the box, there's nothing wrong with it, because you don't know. There's an ignorance to that, and that ignorance is bliss. And yet the moment you start doing inner work, or the moment you elevate your perspective for any other reason, you start to see things differently. And that's the moment
Absolutely.
that you have to now question the box. And so I was really fortunate. My box got questioned really early on in life. And to answer your question, yes, I have had a traditional job. I did, it was for a very short period of time, but it is what catalyzed my understanding of what I knew I was called to do, and that was to coach. And pushing papers behind a desk was something that really wasn't a good fit for me. And it was thankfully it was only like a 3-year period of time, and I threw myself into the coaching world. Now, with that said, here's some other, and this is my perspective again. One, I'm not for everybody, and I understand that. And so I have clients that like to play in the box, and I'm okay working with them. I don't enjoy it as much as I like the individual who's like, let's go explore the outer boundaries. Because to me, the outer boundaries of what's known and what's possible is where I like to play. And I like to push my clients so that they are uncomfortable with what they think is real, what they think is true. And by doing that, that is the only way for true expansion to occur. And so that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is, if you have only known the box, you can do what I call incremental growth. And it's like cracking the box, and you're just peeling away and looking open and letting that sun shine through, that light come through that crack. And that light then informs you like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. And so now you start to break free from that bind. That works, but it takes a significant amount of time to make that transition. And then there's
you're talking about a quantum leap, then, aren't you? You're talking about a paradigm shift.
Correct.
As opposed to the kind of the incremental. You're talking about going all out then with this shift.
Yes, I am. And that is, I think, where true massive change can occur. It's an identity shift. And so it's actually working at the identity level, at the core of who you see yourself to be. Because if you, and this is something that, again, I didn't understand this until I lost everything. And I was working with these, again, household names that came to me to get better. And then when I went and worked with the pro teams, I was like, well, of course, these guys want to get better. But what I found was within the organization, there's a completely different perspective. There's a minimalistic perspective of, well, I'm only going to do as much as I have to do today to get out of here as quick as I can so I can go do what I think is best for me. And so it was this really fascinating piece of like a disconnect between, do I trust the organization to have my best interest in heart? And the reality is, if you look at the history of pro sports, the moment they got to where, you know, you could be lost for the word, but essentially, as soon as you can go and have this ability to seek out another team or whatever, the individual, the player, became dismissible. They became a piece of meat. And now there's no, especially for the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, the Basketball Association, like, those are guaranteed contracts. But in the NFL, there's no guaranteed contracts. You get a guarantee for your bonus, but you don't get a guarantee for actually even being paid. And so there's no commitment by the team to a player. And because there's no commitment, then the commitment from the player to the team is minimal as well. And so that's why we see right now in college sports in the United States, the NIL has magnified this process where a player now can shop around and get money from another team, and they can transfer and they can play in one team 1 year and they get offered a lot of money for another team, and they'll just transfer to that other team. And so there's no continuity, there's no commitment. And the reason I bring this whole story up is because based on your belief system, based on what you believe to be true, sets you up for either a willingness to make a quantum leap or a massive shift, or it sets you up for getting a life lesson that is going to take everything away from you and force the quantum leap. Yeah. Like, you can choose. Do you want to get the lesson from pain, or do you want to get the lesson from wisdom? It's your choice. And that's where, like, I offer my clients is, I've been down this path before. I know what it leads to, and I can help navigate this path for you so that you don't have to feel the pain or the loss that I have.
Yeah.
And it takes a special person and somebody who has an open mindset and someone who is coachable to be able to get wisdom.
Hey, thanks so much for listening into the show. I have a quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck in the grind, even though you're doing everything right? If you're in your 40s working hard in a successful career, but are wondering when you'll finally get to live life on your terms, you're not alone. After 15 years of coaching high-performing professionals, I'm opening up a few one-to-one coaching spots again for those ready to take back control. This isn't fluffy life coaching. It's practical, no BS conversations to help you escape burnout, build real momentum, and start moving towards freedom. If that's you, I'm offering a free 30-minute clarity session to see if we're the right fit. No pressure, just real talk and real strategy. Head to the link below to book your free session. Spots are limited, so grab one while they're open. Listen, you've waited long enough. This might just be the step that changes everything. Yeah, big difference,
Huge.
right? Big difference. And from my perspective, and certainly from perhaps a British perspective, we see you guys in America as, you know, you're pioneers, you know, the land of hope and dreams and the American dream, and, you know, just going all out. Yet we also hear that there are, you know, you're not necessarily even considered to be successful in America until you've been bankrupt, at least once, you know, until you've been on the floor and picked yourself back up. And maybe there is something in that that's, you know, like you say, there's this, you know, it's either going to make you or break you. And like you say, amazing that you are working with people to help them to not get to that level, because I would imagine that there are many who don't recognize the whispers, the voice, the knock at the door, and then the boot up the what's it,
Yeah.
to kick them into touch, literally. But it's almost like it's like a rite of passage. And what you're saying, it sounds like, is that you've either got the life is going to give it to
Yeah.
you, or you have the choice to go, hang on a minute,
Yeah.
something's got to
Yeah.
change. And there is more to learn, there is more growth, but there's also more balance that can be brought into the mix.
Absolutely, and that's the key right there. I actually like to talk about harmony, because for me,
Mm,
balance is a stagnation, whereas harmony is a
okay.
flow. And I
Ooh, I like
I
that.
like this concept, and my experiences. There's when things are stagnant, when things are considered imbalance, then there is a an hindrance of flow. And so how
Mm,
I look at it is, how can I get so that there's this equilibrium going on in your system and an equilibrium in your ecosystem, so that you can actually now move forward with effortlessness and ease. Whereas when
mm,
there's resistance or there's stagnation, then there has to be effort. And so, how can we
yeah.
remove these constraints? How can we remove the stagnation? And it's
Mm,
a physical thing, it's a mental thing, it's an emotional thing, and a spiritual thing. It's it's all of those areas of your life within all the arenas of your life.
yeah.
And if what's fascinating about that too is, I can have success in one area of my life and be a complete failure, for lack of a better word, in another area of my life. And why can't I make that? Why can't I take what I do here and just apply it to there? It's because you don't value that other area. Because if you did
Mm,
value it, you would do it. And so my job is to help people see that. And then to also see, and here's the other piece of this. It's like, I've got clients who say they value family, but they don't spend any time with their family. And all their
yeah.
time, energy, and effort is devoted to their business. And they're bent. Like they there's an incongruence, a misalignment within them that is creating this life that they are not happy with.
Mm,
And one of two things happens. They either realign the amount of effort and time and energy they put into their business and reallocate it to their family, or they really realize that their family isn't the priority and that business
right.
is their priority, and then they
Mm,
reconcile within themselves that that's actually okay. Because there's no judgment in
mm,
someone who is devoted to their calling of building a business and changing the world that way, but not having the family to support them. Like, if you
mm,
understand that that's what you are here to do, then you actually have to be okay with that. And so,
yeah.
by freeing yourself of the burden of this incongruence that I say my family's first, but it's really not, and it's not aligned with who I
Mm,
am, then I have to have a conversation with my family and let them know. And I have to
yes.
have that conversation with myself and be okay with
Mm,
it, right? And
absolutely.
most of my clients, though, they want it all. Like, they want the family to come with them. They want the health to be able to have that energy, the vitality, the virility to be able to enjoy their life for the years to come. And so when what they have to do then is reallocate the time, the energy, the effort, the resources into these other areas of their life, and then maybe even learn how to delegate, learn how to give away, learn how to hire the right people so that they can do that. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it's just a different way of seeing the world, because when you create alignment within yourself, when you have this congruence and this knowing from within, there's a freedom and a peace that comes with that that surpasses all understanding. And so, I'm vigilantly committed to helping my clients get that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's mind blowing that you're doing this kind of work with people who are going to have or are already in the position that they can have that sort of level of impact on
Exactly.
hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands or even millions of
Yeah.
people. That's it's so essential. I think it's an ingredient that is sadly missing
Yeah.
in the human experience, and I think what you're doing is it sounds like it's pretty pioneering stuff because of your personal experience you know going through life, and all credit to you. I mean,
Yeah. Thank you.
genuinely.
I
And
I
so
like to
this
think
leads,
that it's pioneering, but
yeah,
at the same time, I'm also humble enough to know that and have experienced enough that there's a lot of people that do similar things, but
sure, sure.
nobody brings to the table my experience and my expertise, and you know, and that's why I know I'm not for everybody.
Yeah, but that's okay because we don't have to be,
Yeah.
right?
No. Exactly.
If
Yeah.
everybody was for everybody,
Yeah. No.
exactly. You almost want to be Marmite. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if you know what Marmite is, yeah?
I don't actually. What is that?
Okay, so Marmite. It's a spread that it goes onto toast or bread, and it's very savoury. It's a yeast extract, and people either love it or they hate it.
So it's kind of like a Vegemite
And
sandwich, I guess.
yeah, like Vegemite
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, so we say, yeah, be Marmite. You're not for everybody, but the people who love you
Love you.
absolutely love
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No, exactly. And interestingly, when you're talking about, because you're talking about you working with people who have got to a certain point in their career and they're starting to recognize that things are maybe
Yeah.
out of kilter or need to shift or what have you. Now, I have a question for you, which is quite relevant to me. My son turned 18 this weekend.
Oh.
I have one child and he's just turned 18. And my question to you is, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self
Mm.
if you could turn back the clock and give your 18-year-old self, because I'm imagining that it would probably be quite different, or you'd put it quite differently to an 18-year-old
Right.
versus to one of your clients who's had more experience, who's going through the S hitting the fan, or kind of a different level of life experience perhaps. So if you can kind of imagine yourself back at 18, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would lay out my pyramid of development, the levels of development for them, so that he would see that it's and here's the piece that I want to be super clear about. Like, I'm not saying that the hustle harder grind mentality is not necessary. It is, and it is
Mm,
required for, again, these bottom levels of performance. But there's a point in time where you have to transcend that harder mentality
mm,
and move into um, leverage, move into understanding how to lead others, move into a place where you are rising above this place of grind into a place of what's here for me. And so
mm,
what I would share with my 18-year-old is this place where there's a rhythm and a cycle for everything, and
mm,
you do it while always and I'm sure you've seen chameleons, and I don't know if that's really the right word for it, but like these lizards that have one eye over
mm.
here and the other eye is over here, and I like to tell people, like, you have one eye on what you're currently doing, but you have to have this connection to the future you. And so really what I wish somebody would have taught me when I was younger was, it's okay to be in the grind.
Mm.
It's okay
Yeah.
to be in pain,
Mm,
because
mm,
you have to understand that life isn't happening to you.
mm.
Life is happening for you, and
For you.
ultimately the place you want to get to is life is happening through you and
Mm,
from you. And when you can get to that space, you're up in these elevated levels of development. But the lower levels,
mm.
life's happening to you. The sooner you
Yeah.
can get your lesson, the sooner you can understand why this is happening for me, is the sooner I can start to now create the world in which I ultimately want to live in. And that would be the piece where, again, the 18-year-old is they have this beautiful, idealistic way they see the world. And I don't want to take that away from them. I just want them to know that there's so much more available to them than they can even comprehend. Because when I was 18, there was a part of me that was just trying to survive certain areas of my life. And then there were other areas that I was like all in on and didn't even like question. And had I had this understanding that, you know what, this area that I'm just surviving, if I put just a wincy, teeny bit more effort into, it would actually open other doors for me. And
the exponential element of it, right? The exponential,
And so for me, it's again, I'm really into perspective shifts. I'm into perspective and how do you see the world? And the sooner, and this is something I think is really important to have a conversation around today, and that is, we're in a world that, you know, does not agree to disagree anymore. Like I've traveled to 53 countries. I love having conversations with people, and something's happened over the last, really since COVID, where people just don't agree to disagree anymore. Like you can't have a conversation sharing the way you see the world, whether it's a religious belief, whether it's a political belief, whether it's even a fundamental theoretical belief. If it doesn't align with somebody else, people cancel you. They dismiss you. They don't even want to have a conversation with you anymore. And I'm confused by that, because to me, like, I value other people's opinion. I value a new perspective, because that's how I can now see my world more completely, because I know my world's incomplete and I don't have all the answers, but my answers and my experiences shape how I see that. And so to bring it home about the 18-year-old advice is travel, have conversations with other people, share different insights, go get new insights, new experiences. Because, you know, the other thing I would say is, like, live your life today. Commit to what you're doing today. The sooner you can find your calling, the better. I was very fortunate. I found my calling really early in my life. And I feel like I haven't worked a day in my life. Like and don't get me wrong. Like when I was in the NFL, I was working 20-hour days. In the NHL, probably 16, 18-hour days. And sometimes some all-nighters. I went on a world tour with a musician. I pulled more all-nighters in a 6-month period at 45 years old than I had when the previous 45 years of my life. So, like, it doesn't mean you're not going to work.
No.
But it doesn't feel like work, because when you love what you
do, there's no effort, right?
No effort.
Then you're saying, like, the effort, there's no effort. It's the flow. Yeah. That's what you're talking about, exactly. The harmony and bringing that flow.
And to me, that's the performance maverick. That's the world of effortlessness, of ease and enjoyment. And I believe we all have access to it, but we're just one choice away from it. We can choose to hold on to what we know, or we can step into the unknown and let go of the past and start to explore what's present and what's here for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's interesting you said about that, you know, your take on things. Some people will love you or they will leave you.
Yeah.
Where would you say, which area would you say, or which view that you have, would you say that you're most misunderstood then, so that you could perhaps speak to people who wouldn't necessarily take you? Where is it that you're most misunderstood then, do you feel? Am I opening a can of worms?
Yeah, it's okay. I don't mind, because I'm at a place now in my life where, like, I'm actually okay talking about it. So let me try to frame this. I think I'm misunderstood in the world of performance because I've never been in the box. So that's one area, but I that's not a bad misunderstanding. Like, that is what it is. I think the true misunderstanding is my connection to God. And
Mm.
I talk about spirituality. I say I grew up in the church, like I wasn't like, it was more like high school, college time frame. I became a Christian then. I was a Bible beater, but I was really black and white, very very rigid in my thinking
Mm.
and very liturgical. And I couldn't, I like my first wife left me for another woman, and it destroyed me. And at that point I left the church. I couldn't reconcile what had happened. And then I went on this path of debauchery, of pain,
Mm.
of objectifying women. And I didn't even know how to have a conversation with a woman. And that led me down like some pretty dark paths, ultimately losing it all. And recently I've come back to Christ, and it's a
Mm.
really beautiful it's a really beautiful thing for me. And for those that are against Christians, like, just hear me out, because like I realize that my faith is the most important thing to me. And how I see the world today is like, people talk about Christians are very judgmental, and they are. There are Christians that are. But who else is? I mean, the person that says that is also judgmental. And this is
Right. Yeah.
this is the piece of where, like, I'm at, is like, I'm way more accepting of other
Mm.
people. Like, I've traveled the world, and I've been to Sufis, I've been to Taoists, I've been to uh, shamans, I've done plant medicine. Like, I've gone deep down this spiritual rabbit hole, and in doing such, it led me back to Christ. And I'm not saying that I'm holier than thou, because I'm not. Like, I have way more understanding of my sin and my sinfulness than I ever have in my life. But the thing that I also have today that I didn't have when I was a younger Christian is this openness to other people, to other lifestyles, to other circumstances. I don't know what you've gone through that brought you to the adaptation that makes you believe that your life has to be the way it is. I know personally that doesn't have to be the case. That we can transcend our past, that we can transcend our current circumstances in order to create a better future. Whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Christ, whether you believe in shaman, plant medicine, whatever it is that you believe in, let's have a conversation. I'm not going to try to convert you. I'm just going to be me. And
Yeah.
and if by being me and sharing my faith has an impact on you, then that is amazing. And I'll be grateful for that. But like, I don't need to push my way on anybody. I need to be a light in this world. We all need to be lights in this world. And if you have a calling, if you have this deep burning desire within you, that you know that you're here for something more, then it's our responsibility to step up, step out, and do what we are meant to do. And that's, I think, what I'm the most misunderstood about. And
Wow.
there's a whole nother realm of that, like the whole spiritual gifts side of things, because in
Yeah.
my journey in the spiritual world, it opened up a lot of really unique things that I can say, that I do, that, like, I've shared with people that are super in the box, and they're like, what the F are you talking about? I'm like, never mind. And so it's just not the right time. And so,
Yeah.
it, anyway, that's kind of the, I think, the biggest misunderstanding. I think there's a lot, but that's probably the biggest.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, because it's, it's obviously very personal to
Yeah,
you, and it's very powerful. It's always it touches you, and I
yeah,
can see that your passion comes through. It
yeah.
speaks through you, and I think, wouldn't this world be just the most the incredible place if everyone was themselves,
Oh,
with the willingness to hear somebody out, to hear another perspective, not
mm,
agree, like you say, not necessarily come from the same place and have to convince each other to do this, be this, etc., etc., just to hear each other, to see each other, to understand each
mm,
other, to understand the perspective. Because let's face it, like you say, this crazy old world that we seem to be living in is just, I think it's just because of that everybody sees it, that it's the other, that one is the other. They're not the same as me, therefore I am not in their gang, I am not in their, you know their whatever. It's just, there's this, it feels like this sort of divisiveness. And if we could just listen and hear each other, and have that comprehension, and like you say, nobody knows or understands what anyone else has ever been through to lead them to that point. And everything, if you understood, you would know exactly why they are the way they are,
exactly.
why they do the things they do, etc., etc., and it would just break down so many
Oh,
barriers. So,
that was so
you know
beautifully said, Hazel. Like that was incredible, and thank you for like
thank you.
sharing that, because that is the capstone of it all for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree. I mean, I actually really agree. I really agree with you, because I think, there is so much divisiveness in the world that, if we even, the shift the needle, on an episode like
Yeah.
this, or to encourage people to have that kind of conversation. I don't know if you've ever seen. There's a brilliant beer advert. I swear, I'm sure it's like Carlsberg or something, or Heineken. I don't know. I saw this advert once where they had people sitting in a room, in divided up kind of, it was like a stage, like an internal stage, and they had like seating around the edge, and they had divisions between the seating. So you had, different people from different parts of society in those different, situations, like people with tattoos, or people who were, I don't know, from a particular religion or from a particular culture or whatever. Okay, and they're just sitting there, and everyone's sort of eyeing each other up, going, with that sort of look of, look at them, they're not the same as me, blah, blah, blah. And then they proceeded to ask a series of questions, starting off with, who's ever worked in a restaurant, right? So they had to get up out of their seat and go into the middle of the room. And okay, look around. Okay, everybody looks around. Okay, you've worked in a restaurant, right? Go back to your seat. Okay, the next person is, okay. Question, sorry, is okay, now, name, come into the center of the circle if you've ever broken a limb. Okay,
Mm.
okay, all right, they've broken a limb. Okay, okay, go sit back on your seat. Okay, now go into the centre if you've ever known anyone who has had and died of cancer.
Mm.
Right, get up, go into, and now, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now, even just thinking about it, and everybody's starting to go, oh my God, yeah.
Mm.
We all live, we all breathe, we all eat, we all sleep,
Mm.
we all go to the toilet, we all hurt, we all love, we all cry, etc., etc., etc. And by the end of this 15-minute experiment, social experiment, they're all hugging.
Wow.
There's no division.
Yeah.
They're crying. They're just seeing each other for who they really are,
Mm.
in terms of the level of understanding. And that's just like, for me, that's the epitome of, let's get this message across, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what a great
So
advert. I'm gonna have to search that out. That sounds amazing.
search it out.
Um,
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
yeah.
Maybe post it under this episode if I
Yeah.
do.
It's so fascinating how we show up with this facade, this protective
Mm,
guarding mechanism that we think is protecting us, but it is only hindering us. It's only preventing
mm,
us from having true connection. The thing that we long for, the thing that we desire, we're hindering it because we're trying to protect ourselves from getting hurt. And
yeah,
the only way to do it
yeah.
is to avail ourselves to that situation and
Mm.
see. Um, yeah, it's. and I probably have another aspect of that is me personally, because of the lack and the worthiness that issues that I've had. Like, I didn't think I would be loved. I didn't think I would be accepted. And if I wasn't, I would sabotage the relationship because, well, I feel like, they're not appreciating me. and and the reality is that's not the truth either, right? Because like they could have had an off day, or they just didn't acknowledge, they didn't hear me, or they didn't, consider to thank me, but they're very thankful for me. It's just they didn't communicate it. And so, that's a me.
We're all seeing it through the
exactly.
lens, our own lens, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
The joy of it all. I know. I mean, we've gone deep in this episode, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I'm loving how we've just kind of just gone straight there. And if there were like 3 books or films or podcasts that you have in mind that that you love, that you would recommend to our listeners today, what would you impart? Is it something that springs to mind in that sense?
Well, I will share. I love Clive Woodward. He wrote a book called Winning. He was very instrumental in opening my mind into even a broader perspective of that integrated approach to performance. And he's a fellow Brit. Huge fan of that book personally. For lack of, I because I'm rereading and I took me, gosh, I'm 56 right now, and I just started reading the Bible again. And I would encourage everybody to read the Bible. I think it's worth reading. There's a lot of great lessons in there, whether you believe it or not. I just think there's just a lot of great life lessons in there. Let me see.
Put you on the spot, haven't I?
You have, because I have. You should see my nightstand. By my bed, I've got like 10 books, and some of them are great, and some of them are not, and some of them are on like the topic that I'm most interested in this moment. And so I'm reading a lot of speaking books right now, and marketing books.
Is there a film you've seen that just springs to your mind that has inspired you?
Well, again, I'm gonna I recently watched the whole series of Chosen, and it's also again a biblical based movie, but I think it was very moving to me. I think it's worth watching as well. If you want to get stuck in the grind, you can watch Michael Jordan's The Last Dance. I think there's a lot of great lessons in there, and even lessons that they didn't intend to provide, but that show you the benefit of the grind and the cost of the grind.
Right.
You have to search for the cost, because it certainly glorifies the grind mentality, but there's a lot of great lessons in there.
Sick.
Yeah. So that's a good start.
Great.
You can also read my book too if you want. or let me plug this. You could watch my TED Talk, The Secret to Success Without Burnout. Would be a great thing for you to watch.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great. I highly recommend it. So definitely. If I can get a link set up at the end of this, underneath this episode as well. So if I get my tech guys to do that, then absolutely we'll stick that in there as well. Perfect. Because 100%, I hugely admire anyone who's done a TEDx talk. You're right up there as far as I'm concerned.
Appreciate that.
But yeah, 100%. And it just goes to show to me, Tim, that your compass is so. That's where you are right now, and just the very fact that you're mentioning this is just that's where you're at right now in your life, and your compass is set there, and so there's no apology needed, or no kind of there's no it's where you're at, and that's key. And that, like you say, that will resonate with people or not,
Yeah.
and that's absolutely
Yeah.
fine. And we just have to put our own truth into this
Yeah.
world, and when we speak truth, like you say, you're the light then, in terms of whoever you touch with that light, and if it's from the right place, whatever anybody's right place is,
Yeah.
then we all know it.
Yeah.
We all know what that right place is. We all know, we can all feel inside when it's the right
Yeah.
thing. And I don't think it matters what religion, culture, creed, color, age, background, part of the world you come from.
Yep.
It's
I'm
yeah,
with you on that.
we all
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
And lastly, is there anything that you would like to share other than what we've spoken about? Is there any one last little gem of wisdom, or anything else you just wanted to touch on before we wrap up today?
That's a great question.
You've already imparted like so
Yeah.
much great stuff. I'm wondering if there's anything else left in there.
I
I'm
got.
sure you've got
I
oodles,
have. I have
and
a
you're like,
lot.
you got so much.
I
I
think.
sense it's like,
I think the last thing I'm gonna say, and um, I done a work with this individual named Shannon Graham, and at the end of our time together, he said to me, Tim, it's important to have grace for yourself. And I'm probably my biggest critic. Whatever you say about me, I guarantee I've said 10 times worse than whatever that is. And you being a euphemistic view, like the criticism I've gotten in the past, I'm telling you, it's nothing compared to what I've said and done to myself. And I think this space of grace, of allowing ourselves to be okay with our current circumstance, be okay with who we currently are, and know that we can choose better, that we can choose to create a new endeavor. And I think grace is something that I'm in the process of really truly learning, that I'm really truly learning how to apply to myself and for myself. It definitely is not something that has come easy to me or for me. And because it is something that is so top of mind to me, I'm sharing it with others who might be in a similar situation, where have some grace.
yeah.
So
That's a really powerful share, Tim. Thank you. That's brilliant, and that's a really powerful message to end,
yeah,
I think, this episode. And it's so you're so right. And I think we're all hard on ourselves.
yeah,
We've all been hard on ourselves in our life to one degree or another. Like you say, let alone other people being like, how would you talk to your best friend? What advice would you give to your best friend? In terms of how you talk to yourself. And I think grace is that whole, it's like another level of that, isn't
yeah.
it? Just the acceptance, an acceptance of who you are, where you're at. I think that's beautiful. So thank you
Yeah, you're welcome.
so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. And I that's great.
And you, thank you, like, for holding space, for asking such great questions. Like, this has been super fun. I really appreciate you, Hazel. So thank you for having me
You're
on.
very welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome, Tim. Absolutely, it's been wonderful
Yeah.
to get to know you better, and for the audience to hear your story, and
Yeah.
no doubt have taken very, very deep, wise words of wisdom from it, and can now maybe start to ponder those
Yeah.
things, and see how they could integrate it in their life. And if anyone's interested in your TEDx talk, we'll get the link down
Great.
below. Also, how else can they get in touch with you? How else can they be in touch?
Probably the easiest way is LinkedIn. Coach
Hmm.
Tim Adams would be the easiest way to find me. My website's
Okay.
Coach Tim Adams. Uh, Instagram's Coach Tim Adams. Most of my socials are Coach Tim Adams. You can certainly find me on those.
Nice and simple.
Reach out, DM me if you have a question. I'm like I will answer all my DMs. So
Wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful. Thank you,
you're
Tim.
welcome.
That's absolutely fantastic. So, last to be said is just thank you so much for being you, for being here now,
Thank you.
because that's the only time there is, right?
Right.
And I love the unfolding of these conversations and what they bring, because there's always something really powerful when you just go on an exploratory kind of journey with somebody on a conversation. That's what I love about it, because it can be serendipitous, synchronicity, has synchronicity, etc. And it's kind of, it's lovely. It's with the effervescence of it. I think that's what's where the magic happens.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your presence and for your grace and your words of wisdom today as well, Tim. So thank you so much for being part of the Wealth Whisperer today.
Thank you.